Hello, and welcome to Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am your host, John Rothman. If you're a fan of the show, make sure to hit the follow button on the top right of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you are listening at this very moment. When you hit follow, leave a review or share an episode with a friend. It helps other people discover the show, keeps us going. As I like to point out each and every day, it expands our base. The whole world is watching Jamaica and the approaching storm. There is no doubt that there will be huge devastation. There is also no doubt that what is happening in the world in terms of climate change is real. This storm is the biggest storm to hit Jamaica since records were first kept. That's what's so astounding. And perhaps there is nothing we can do because Mother Nature is what Mother Nature is. There's no way to control what is happening. But we need to be prepared in terms of the potential for emergencies. And I think that is the key. The whole world is watching how this emergency reacts and how we react to it. There is more, of course, in terms of what has happened here in the United States, in terms of two critical federal agencies, FEMA and the NOAA. Let's point out that FEMA is emergency relief, and we all remember the impact that FEMA has had in disaster after disaster. And of course, we know that NOAA is playing a critical role even now in what's happening in Jamaica. The question is, when we have huge cutbacks in FEMA and when we have huge cutbacks in the question of the weather, what do we do? And that, my friends, is the critical question. The question I am posing to you today. Because there are major budget considerations. We are in the 28th day of a budget shutdown. All of you are aware of that. And this is a critical moment in the United States. We now have a situation where people are not getting paid, where air traffic controllers are not getting paid, where the very programs which feed the most hungry among us, well, may not have the money to continue. And I'm raising this with you because one of the most important single aspects of all of this is that the House of Representatives, the People's House, has not been in session because the Speaker of the House won't call it back into session. And whatever his reasons, there is a lapse in what we now understand as the three branches of government. So I want to address this for a few moments with you. First of all, the question of the House of Representatives. There is no excuse for Speaker Johnson not to summon the full House. It's time. And I realize he has the problem of the Jeffrey Epstein discharge, which most assuredly he will lose on that vote. But don't you understand, Mr. Speaker? You have shut down a House of Congress, which is vital to the governing of this country. And of course, we also understand that the president now is acting unilaterally on a whole host of issues. And with a government shutdown, the president has greater latitude in terms of what he can do and cannot do in terms of our government. These are issues which need to be addressed, which need to be understood clearly and precisely. And then we have a missing in action from the United States Supreme Court. There are serious cases which need to be considered, including presidential power, including the tariffs, so many issues. And the Supreme Court doesn't seem to want to act on any of them. Or if they do, it appears that there will be a divided court. Why do I say that? Because it appears that Alito and Thomas will always vote with the president. It equally appears that the three liberal justices on the court are going to continue to vote the way they vote, which means there are two key swing votes on the United States Supreme Court. They are the Chief Justice, John Roberts, and Amy Coney Barrett, the Associate Justice. And we could have decisions that are 5-4 decisions, one way or the other. This is a critical time in the history of our country, and the question of a functioning government is critical. I pointed out recently that Anthony Kennedy, the retired Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court, in his new book and in his public interviews, is stating clearly and precisely the importance of maintaining three co-equal branches of government. And the implicit criticism is that we don't have three co-equal branches of government now, but the unitary executive, the power of the executive, is growing, in part because of the passivity of Congress. Maybe it's because Donald Trump has bullied them just too often. And the Supreme Court, which seems to be the last line of defense against an imperial presidency. And they too seem reluctant to take on this question. There are many issues in the world which we could talk about, from Ukraine to the Middle East, to the question of presidential power, and indeed the president's trip to the Far East, which is continuing apace. And of course, the president's statement just a few hours ago that even though he is in Asia, he is concerned about the future of America's cities. And therefore, the threat of the National Guard or ICE being used in major American cities is real. These are issues of major concern, things which we need to be aware of and be debating. And frankly, we are not. We are not discussing these critical issues, in part because there is so much going on. And of course, the one issue which seems to have attracted the most attention, at least in terms of my emails and my feedback, the question of the White House and the destruction of the East Wing. I've been listening carefully to listeners' comments and concerns. And of course, you are right. I believe this is an overreach of presidential power and shows the arrogance of power. Well, all of these issues and more need to be discussed in greater depth, and we will do that in the days ahead. So I want you to stay tuned and be aware that we face a crisis in our country, in our world, and indeed a crisis in terms of the functioning of American democracy. Thanks for tuning into another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. I am John Rothman. Make sure to follow along. Let me know your thoughts on the show by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and sharing an episode with a friend or colleague so we can continue to grow and expand, which, of course, is our goal. You can interact with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and, of course, my direct email. And I most assuredly want to thank Gogo Zoger, who produces this podcast, for all of her good work. This is John Rothman. I'll be back tomorrow with another episode of Around the Political World with John Rothman. See you then.